The start of a new year means a brand new journal. So let's dive in and get ready for 2026 together. Hi, hello, and welcome to my 2026 new journal setup. For 2026, I wanted to try something different, and so I've gone with an A5 craft paper journal from Notebook Therapy. I'll have all of the journal details listed in the description box below in case you're interested in getting one for yourself. I'm also working with the brand Arrtx again. They very kindly sent me their new paint markers that feature higher opacity, thinner brush tip, and an advanced ink flow mechanism, and I thought they'd be perfect to try out in this craft paper journal. I'll have links for you in the description box on where you can purchase these markers for yourself or even as a Christmas gift for the art lover in your life. I've really enjoyed using these markers, honestly. I've loved their previous versions, of course, but the opacity is easily better than the other markers that I've used from this brand, and I also adore the packaging. It's so cute. Also, thank you to Arrtx for sending me these markers and for working with me again, and with that said, let's dive in. Keeping in mind that I wanted to use and feature the Arrtx paint markers, as well as utilising the craft paper aesthetic, I decided on a simple theme of florals. I have a bunch of different PET tapes that are the same floral design, but just different colourways, and I thought I could use these as the main element, with each colour of tape being complemented by different coloured paint markers. Also, I love the look of white on craft paper. So being that this whole journal is craft paper, I'm using my trusty white gel pens a lot and will likely do so throughout this whole journal. As we saw just a little before, I also pulled some other stickers like flowers and other little pieces for decoration, but I actually use very little of these other items, mainly the floral PET tapes and the paint markers. I do end up grabbing a few bits later on, mostly for the cover spread, and I'll have as much of that linked in the description box as I can. So, with that, let's get started with the actual planning. Typically, I always start first with my cover spread, but this time I'm actually starting with my swatches page. I wanted to see how everything looked before deciding on any colours, especially seeing as this is craft paper and my usual markers like Tombows would look quite different on these pages. So I begin by ruling out all my swatching sections and I get going, starting with the paint markers from Arrtx. I don't actually decorate this spread until later in the video, but doing it this way means that I can choose a floral tape and I can easily see what paint markers will match with which tape, etc. before committing to anything. The swatches take ages to do, but I actually use them so often that it's worth it, especially when I'm using a different paper to normal. I will say, it became apparent to me very quickly that the downside to using a journal with craft paper is that I can't use my usual tricks to cover up mistakes. At some point, I think I'll have some spare craft paper that I can use to cover over any sort of small mistakes, but I can't use whiteout tape or white paint pens to cover up my mistakes, so I'm gonna have to think about how to take care of that. I'm gonna leave you here just for a minute or two while we finish off all of these swatches, and I'll be back very soon for the start of the cover spread. Okay, so we're finally starting on the cover spread and the blue florals were calling to me, so that's what I went with first. I actually wasn't sure yet if I'd be using the same tape throughout the whole setup or changing tape colours between spreads, but I knew I wanted to try the blue first. I wanted to use the Arrtx markers to pick out the yellow orangey tones in the PET tape, so I decided on some yellow and blue markers and the idea was to feature those. It turned out though that the yellows were just not quite right. They were too yellowy, so I decided to use blue instead and make the whole cover spread very blue centric. I cut the PET tape in half and separated them so that they were creating a sort of box through the middle of the pages where titles and headings could go. I actually use this on every single page in this setup, it's just the tape colour and marker colours that change. What I like about that is that I got to experiment with a bunch of different marker colours while still keeping the theme consistent the whole way through. Oh, also, these PET tapes aren't cut around the floral shapes, so there's sort of just this huge chunk of clear plastic above and below the flowers, which I really don't love. So even though I don't show the footage of me doing it for every tape, I actually fussy cut around the shapes of every single tape. I like how it looks much better, but also it leaves more usable space. If you don't cut around the tapes, then there's huge spaces of PET material that you just can't write on, and I hate that, so I take the time for the fussy cutting. I really wanted the paint markers to pop, so I'm using my Uniball Signo white gel pen with a 0.8 tip, it's actually a broad nib, to outline everything, which makes it feel really complete in my opinion. I also used the same pen to make a border, so above the bottom straight edge of the floral tape and under the straight edge of the top floral tape. Again, for consistency, I do this on each spread. And while I don't use my staple of dot stickers here, I do another thing that I often do, and I add lots of dots and sparkles with the wide gel pen. I also add in some of the flower transfer stickers I have, and later some rose gold leaves and florals. You can see here that I've brought in some large yellow floral stickers to try and tie in some of the yellow in the main PET tape that I'm using, as well as various blue stickers to try and tie everything together. Being that I'm back in an A5 journal for the first time in a year and I'm used to something a bit bigger, I had to adjust for that smaller size. So I ended up cutting the yellow flowers in half, but I really love the effect. The blue stickers add a bit of a magical vibe, which I like, but I don't actually use these much on any other spreads, as I really only had spare room on the cover. I also brought out a bunch of various butterflies, which I do use throughout the whole setup because they're small and you can sort of put them anywhere. Butterflies aren't usually my vibe, but because I don't use them much, I had a bunch floating around that I decided to use up, including some white ones that wouldn't easily show on normal white journal paper, but they stand out so well on the craft paper. I pulled some small florals too, but once I started doing some little leaf drawings with the Arrtx markers, I ended up not really needing a lot of anything else. I'm not quite done with the cover spread yet, but if you've seen any of my videos, you'll know that I often sit on my cover spread for a bit and I come back to it when I've got a proper hold on what I'm doing for the whole theme. So we're moving on to my future log. This is a staple in a bullet journal, though I think what I do is probably more creative planning than bullet journaling. I don't use an index or anything like that because I find I don't use it, but I do use the heck out of my future log. I start with February, since as soon as I start using the journal, I'll have my January monthly done and I can just add stuff directly there. As a mum of one and someone with an autoimmune disease, this spread is so helpful for keeping track of school stuff and all my doctor's appointments. I like to have a decent amount of space for each month of this journal, and then I add additional spaces for the rest of the year, since my doctor's appointments can sometimes be scheduled far in advance. Last year, I got away with these being on a single spread, but this time I need two. I tried ruling the white border before laying down the tape, but I found it actually worked better doing it the other way around, so I only did that here. Also, my lighter tombos on this paper are really desaturated and it makes them perfect for highlighting headings and for adding second line highlights. Some of the lighter colour Arrtx markers do need a second coat, but honestly, that's normal for light coloured acrylic paints. Most everything I did here used 2 coats of paint, sometimes more depending on the colour, but that was very rare. The darker colours like the dark blue and green were actually perfect with just 1 coat. Here was where I decided to try drawing some leaves to accent either side of the headings, and I'm so happy with how these look. They do look kind of meh before I line the edges, but for a more delicate look, I'm using my 0.8 Sakura white jelly roll for outlining all the leaves and the small details, and I think they might just be my favourite thing in the whole setup. I just meant to explain to you that my Uniball Signo and my Sakura Jelly Roll are both the same size, but the Signo line is thicker because it's a broad nib, but then I realised that the Uniball Signo is a 1.0 size, so that's why they look different. But also it does have a broad nib, so you do get a thicker line than you do even using a Jelly Roll of the same size. For the second page of my future log, I used the same coloured floral tape, but I switched the dominant paint colours around. So I used pink for the heading instead of the blue-green colour. It adds some variety without changing the materials, but other than that, the elements are all the same. I actually don't need very many setups for the start of my journals, but this one has been with me since I started journaling, and it's my About Me page. I like to put info such as my current age, my current hyperfixations, things that I love, all of that sort of stuff. It's fun to look back and see what's changed over the years. The right-hand page is for birthdays. I can barely remember my name some days, so I like to keep track of everything in one place, so I find it really handy just to have this little birthday page at the start of each of my journals. This might be my favourite spread purely because I love the green and yellows together so much. I had to do quite a few layers of the yellow marker actually, but that's purely because of the colour of the craft paper. On white paper, I think it would have been much easier to see, but with the white gel pen outline, I think it ends up looking great. I also used a blue-grey paint marker for the leaves, which I'm not sure was the right call to go with the green. Maybe I should have just stuck with the yellow, but either way, I still love how it turned out. On the cover page, I used these gilded washi material frames. Well, I used one, and I hadn't had the space to use one anywhere else, so I decided to use it on the About Me page as another place to write on and a bit of layering or a textural element. I didn't get a place to use these again, so I'm glad I found at least one other place so that the cover wasn't the only one there. I also just want to note that throughout this setup I've used both my white gel pen as well as a black pen. I thought that using only white would be too much, and I'm glad I used both. I think the all white pen would have been overwhelming and the black would have lacked some pizzazz? I don't know, but I think the combination worked really well. And now we move on to the final set of spreads, other than the swatches page that still needs to be decorated. I'm creating a Dutch door here for two reasons. One, I want an offcut so that I can create a grid spacing ruler. I've done these before, and I actually got the idea from Erin Smith, and she has a tutorial on how to make one, but I use these when creating a new monthly setup all the time. And two, I'm grouping together a few different things here, and they don't all necessarily go together. So this way I can kind of keep them in one place where it feels like one spread, but really it's two. The first section at the top is for my socials. It's super motivating for me to see the physical numbers progress for my YouTube each month, so I like to keep track of those and of Instagram as well. It also helps me to see if I'm having dips and I can investigate why that might be happening. Under that, I have some little, tracker things. I have a place I can note down anything I might possibly need to buy, especially larger purchases that I have to save for, or that I really want but I can't justify getting right now. And I also have a place where I can write down any recurring payments I have. For example, at the moment, I have Sticky and Audible, but I also got a deal on a streaming service for 1 year, and here I can see when it ends and the next payment is due, so I can cancel it before I get charged. Otherwise, I'd just forget. The next set of pages are for goal keeping and idea generation. I like to set achievable goals for my work and personal goals, as well as for my physical health and my mental health. I don't really subscribe to resolutions or anything, but I like to try and reach for something positive to keep a good mindset and to have something to work towards. I don't always reach these goals, but that's why I don't do anything too big or important, so I can't get down on myself if I don't reach them. The idea generation page is just a place that I can write down ideas for themes or spreads I might want at some point in this journal, or to try for my next journal setup. I forgot to add this in my last journal setup, so I'm really glad that I remembered this time. Since both of these sections go together, even though there are multiple pages, I'm decorating both in the same way. I went back to the blue for this one since I really loved how the cover spread turned out. I needed quite a bit of space for the functional areas here, so in order to keep the same decorative elements, I added the floral tape as before, but just cut it away in the places I needed to be able to write. It's a neat trick that can also make something look integrated even when you need that space for functionality. I just used a craft knife and tweezers to cut and pull away the parts that I didn't want. There wasn't a heading that would encompass everything, so instead, I just wrote mini headings with arrows. It's maybe not the best solution, but it's kind of whimsical and fun, I think. Oh, yeah, this was the time that I forgot how I write the T for Tash usually, and it's just a whole big mess. Considering going back later and covering it with some paper and rewriting it, but it's not that big of a deal, honestly. I'm getting around to decorating the swatches spread now. Nothing different here to talk about, but I did decide on the green florals for this one. I just felt like they worked the best with all the colours on the page and they complemented everything nicely. And this is the last spread for this setup, though I do leave a full blank spread before I start January, just in case I forget to add something. If I don't end up needing it, maybe I'll draw something or do a memory spread or something. The only thing left to do now, other than going back to previous pages to add some small finishing details, is to create my grid spacing ruler, which is coming up in just a second. And here it is. As I said earlier, this is something that I use regularly when creating new monthlies and weeklies. I've numbered from top to bottom of the page as well as horizontally across the page. I've marked out where halfway on the page would be, as well as quarters and thirds for both horizontal and vertical. I'm using some scrapbooking paper to line the back of the ruler, just to make it nice and sturdy and make sure it'll last for the 6 months that I'm going to use it for. The first go around, I glued the pattern side the wrong way because of who I am as a person, so I just did it again over the top the right way this time, which just made it a little sturdier, so it's fine. We're fine, this is fine. After that, I'm taking some more gorgeous scrapbooking paper and using it to create a little pouch to hold the ruler. If I don't do this, I will lose it, so it's kind of a necessity. I like to put this on the very first page after the nameplate page. It's a single page that's sort of attached to the cover, so it's not really as usable as the pages after it, and that just means it's the perfect place to keep my ruler. I'm decorating this page in the same way as the others. I normally don't go to this much effort for my ruler holder page, but I had a lot of fun with this one. Anyway, with that, we are at the end of this video. I adore how my journal for the start of the year has turned out, and I can't wait to see what else I can come up with for a craft paper journal. Also, a huge thank you to Arrtx for sending me the paint markers that I used in this theme. If you'd like to try them for yourself, I'll have all the info in the description box. If you've enjoyed watching this video, you can subscribe to get notified when I upload new content, and if you'd like a little bonus content and early access, you can become a channel member. It's not necessary at all, but the option is there if you want it. If you're still here, thank you so much. I'd love it if you left me a flower emoji in the comments so that I know you made it all the way to the end of the video. And with that, I leave you until the next one. Thank you as always for being here. I am so appreciative that you've chosen to watch my content. I hope that you're having an incredible time of day and that you're as happy and as healthy as you can be, and I'll see you again very soon.